Beneath a hill named Mount Li in Xi'an, in central China, lies a world no living man has fully seen. They call it the mausoleum of the first emperor, the resting place of Qin Shi Huang, the man who forged China and buried it with him. The story begins with silence, the kind of silence that belongs only to tombs. That night inside the vast subterranean city beneath Mount Li, torch shafts cast long shadows that danced across packed earth, stone, and seal. In the inner-city mausoleum precinct of the first emperor, workers spoke in hushed tones of the latest order. The concubines, located in the inner ring of tomb chambers, were to be brought forth and buried alive, to accompany their lord into the afterlife. One chamber being prepared, its walls already echoing with the drip of water and the scrape of picks. A young woman named Hua Lai, Flower of Strength, stood barefoot, her silken gown trailing in the dust. Her face was pale, her gold pin still in place. Behind her, the eunuch Zhang Yi whispered the instructions, voice trembling. "Lady Hua, the emperor commands that you follow him beyond the mortals. A new life begins at dawn." She looked at him. "Servant Zhang, do I sleep then?" He swallowed. "Sleep? No, you go into the chamber when the doors are sealed. It is not sleep." She closed her eyes and waited. In the corridor, laborers moved sacks of earth and sealed boxes stamped with the emperor's seal. A guard watched silently. One asked quietly, "How many tonight?" Another answered, 48 tombs for concubines in the inner city zone." The guard nodded. "They will not emerge." In the chamber, Hua Lai sat on a low bench. The torchlight flickered. At the doorway, a seal keeper, Lei Ming, read aloud the order. "In the name of heaven and the first emperor, all the concubines without issue shall dwell within the tomb, so they may serve him forever." Hua Lai's breath caught. She glanced at the faint outlines of other women kneeling, embracing pearls and jade ornaments they had worn in life. The walls were rising quickly, stones being laid, earth pressing in. Outside, the final guard on the corridor slid the bolt. At that moment, the flute of a distant horn was heard, or was it the hum of metal? Hua Lai thought it might be her heart. The sealed door clanged shut. A gust of foul air rose from the sealed threshold. She stood. The torchlight waned. Outside, laborers dumped tramloads of crushed quartz and clay, sealing the corridor behind the tomb ring. The muffled thuds sounded like distant thunder. Somewhere the earth closed. The earth hid the doors. The concubines' voices faded. The chamber filled with a stillness, so profound the workers above heard nothing but their own boots. Outside, the final handful of workers left the inner precinct. A bolt slid. A stone block sealed the entrance. Lei Ming stepped out, wiped sweat from his brow, and handed his torch to the guard. "It is done." The guard nodded, repeating quietly, "It is done." The moon broke through a gap in the clouds, shining on the mound that looked like an ordinary hill. No one knew what lay beneath. In the post-dawn light, even the laborers who had dumped the last earth felt dread. Some watched the slope of the tomb, seeing that odd gloom behind the saplings. A guard whispered, their voices stopped. Another nodded, "And yet I feel them." And so the concubines became tomb objects, no longer women with dreams, but stones in an eternal palace of one. In the records of Sima implicit reference is made to subordinate tombs for concubines in the inner city of the mausoleum. Archaeologists have found 48 such chambers for imperial concubines buried alive with the emperor. The historian Sima, writing a century later, describes how the inner chambers were filled with treasures, artisans, and attendants, and how those who built it were locked inside once the doors were closed, so no one would ever reveal the secrets of the tomb. He was not born an emperor. He was born a prince named Wang Zheng in 259 BCE, during the Warring States period, when China was divided into 7 kingdoms locked in endless bloodshed. From the moment he opened his eyes, the world was chaos. All around him were whispers of betrayal, invasions, and shifting alliances. By the age of 13, Wang Zheng inherited the throne of Qin, a kingdom known for its ruthlessness and discipline. He was a child surrounded by wolves, and he learned quickly how to become one. His early years were marked by shadows. A mother entangled in scandal with her lover, a eunuch named Lu Bu, who had once been the king's advisor and may even have been Wang Zheng's true father. The boy grew up in a web of lies, conspiracies, and half-truths. He trusted no one. By 21, he took full control of Qin. And then he began to conquer. One by one, the rival states fell. Zhao Han, Wei Chu, Yan, Qi, each crushed under the relentless march of Qin's iron legions. By 221 BCE, the wars were over. For the first time in history, China was unified under one ruler. He named himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of Qin. Not a king, not a man. An eternal sovereign chosen by the heavens themselves. And with that name began an empire built not just on victory, but on fear. Qin Shi Huang saw chaos as weakness. He despised the disorder that had torn the kingdoms apart. To him, the only path to peace was control, total, merciless control. He standardized everything: the written language, currency, weights, measures, even the width of the cartwheels that rolled across his empire. Every decree bore his seal, every voice of dissent was silenced. Those who opposed his rule were not exiled, they were erased. The old philosophies, the teachings of Confucius, and the scholars who questioned the emperor's vision were condemned as dangerous relics. In 213 BCE, he ordered the burning of the books. Thousands of scrolls were thrown into flames, their ashes rising into the sky like the ghosts of knowledge. And when scholars protested, when they dared to speak of virtue and morality, he buried them alive. 460 of them, according to the historian Sima Qian. Their cries were swallowed by the earth, their ideas suffocated beneath it. It was said that from that day on, no one in China dared to speak his name without fear. But even for a man who commanded nations, one enemy still remained. An enemy that could not be conquered by armies or walls. Death. From his youth, Qin Shi Huang had been obsessed with immortality. Every illness, every dream, every dark omen sent him into panic. He saw death as rebellion, an insult to his divine rule. He sent expeditions across the empire, alchemists, magicians, and scholars, searching for the elixir of life. They traveled to the eastern seas, chasing legends of islands where immortals lived in mist and light. They returned with potions of mercury and gold, promising eternal life. The emperor drank them faithfully. Ironically, the very thing he believed would make him immortal was slowly poisoning him. But even as his body began to decay, his mind turned to something grander, a way to cheat death not through elixirs, but through engineering. If he could not live forever, his empire would. And his tomb would be the empire's heart, a kingdom beneath the ground where he would reign for eternity. Construction began long before his death, an army of 700,000 laborers carving, shaping, and burying a world beneath the mountain. They built rivers of mercury to flow around a palace of bronze and gold. They painted stars on the ceiling to mimic the night sky. They crafted entire landscapes underground, trees, towers, lakes, and walls, all meant to accompany the emperor into the next world. And of course, they built the army, the Terracotta warriors, 8,000 life-size soldiers, generals, archers, cavalrymen, even horses, each molded with human individuality, each gaze frozen in loyalty. They were not mere statues. They were protectors, the emperor's army for eternity. But soldiers were not enough. The emperor would need servants. He would need musicians. He would need those who had loved him, or at least pretended to. And so, as the tomb neared completion, a darker order was given. The great emperor's grave was sealed not with stone, but with flesh and fear. Above ground, his legacy stretched across mountains and deserts. Qin Shi Huang ordered the construction of a wall to protect the empire. A massive chain of fortifications that would become the foundation of what we now call the Great Wall of China. Hundreds of thousands labored under the sun, dragging stones through wilderness, through blizzards, through hunger and exhaustion. It was said that for every yard of wall built, a life was lost. The people called it the longest cemetery on earth. And through it all, the emperor remained unseen. Isolated behind veils of gold, surrounded by fear, consumed by paranoia. He believed death followed him in disguise, sometimes in a dream, sometimes in a servant's shadow. He traveled in secret, using decoys of himself to confuse assassins. He ordered that anyone who mentioned his mortality be executed. But the end came all the same. In 210 BCE, while on a journey through the eastern provinces, searching once more for the elixir of life, the emperor fell ill. He died far from his palace, far from his tomb, at the age of 49. His ministers hid his death for weeks, fearing unrest. They placed his corpse in a carriage filled with fish to mask the smell of decay, and continued the procession home under the pretense that the emperor still lived. Behind the royal chariot, thousands marched, soldiers, servants, and the silent women chosen to die with him. When the procession reached Mount Li, the tomb awaited, the greatest construction in the history of the ancient world, and the darkest. There Qin Shi Huang was laid to rest, surrounded by rivers of mercury, his clay army, his artisans, and his concubines. And the first emperor of China began his second reign over a kingdom of the dead. But even in death, he was not at peace. Legends say the rivers of mercury still flow beneath that mountain, that the soil above it is poisoned, the air haunted by whispers of those who were buried alive. No one has dared to open the central chamber. Not even now. 2,000 years later, his body still lies untouched, his secrets still waiting in the dark. Because some empires never stop ruling.